Hello and welcome back to the channel. Today I'm going to be talking about Andrei Tarkovsky's second to last film called Nostalghia from 1983. If you haven't seen Nostalghia, please turn off the video because I will be talking about some plot points, characters, and camera techniques. So if you don't want to be spoiled by this video, you can turn it off and come back to it later. For those viewers that have been watching my videos up to this point, I'm working through Tarkovsky's filmography, and this is the second to last film, as I mentioned, 1983. It's Tarkovsky's first film made outside of Russia, so he made this film in Italy. So the basic plot is of Andrei, the main character, a Russian intellectual who is spending some time in Italy with with a companion, his translator, and he meets up with a person who is kind of a crazy man named Domenico, played by Erland Josephson, who is very famous for being in Ingmar Bergman films, most notably Scenes from a Marriage, but certainly in many of his films. So that's the basic plot of Nostalghia. It is truly an amazing film. I'm so surprised. Well, I guess I'm not that surprised, but as I go through the filmography, I think I'm seeing a great film, and then I'm waiting for the next film maybe to be not as good, and Nostalghia is just even better than the last one that I've seen. This is going to be really tough picking a top three Tarkovsky films, but basically I'll give you a few parts of the film that I like and some quotes as well. This particular film is very dark, very brooding. Again, this is the first film that Tarkovsky made out of his native Russia, so you get the sense that he's a little bit homesick for his for his home. The character also has kind of a brooding nature. At the start of the film, you do get a bit of a prologue like I've been seeing in many of the other films. It's black and white, so the film does go from black and white to color. You get the sense that black and white is really the memory portion of the film. Again, I could be completely wrong on that. I'm not a Tarkovsky expert, but that seems to be the sense I get, is that the black and white sections are these memories. And Tarkovsky, especially in this film and also in The Mirror, does a great job of expressing on film exactly, or more precisely, how memory seems to work. And in that, during the course of your day, you might be thinking about what's happening in the present, but you might have a flashback to what's happening in the past, or thinking about something in the future. Tarkovsky is excellent at that, I think. And it's just amazing to watch the way he works and the way he intermingles a lot of these images, so you get the feeling like your protagonist, Andrei, is kind of going back and forth and thinking of things that have happened in the past. I see a lot of the same elements that I've seen with most of the Tarkovsky films that I've been watching, and that is, there is a breaking of the fourth wall in that the characters sometimes will look directly into the camera. This is a not a very common technique, I don't believe, at least in American films, but it's a really amazing technique to engage the viewer in what is happening. Sometimes you get the feeling like it is a point of view shot from another character's point of view, but it can be a little bit alarming, or maybe it catches you off guard to have a character look directly into your eyes or directly at you while the film is progressing. One of my absolute favorite scenes is when Andrei arrives at the hotel in Italy. His room looks like a theater set. That's the way I interpreted it. He opens a window to the left of the frame, and it's raining. To the right of the frame is a bathroom, and there's a mirror in the bathroom, and it looks as though it's a theater set. And it's just amazing the way this particular scene is lit. Tarkovsky leaves you looking at this scene for quite some time at the beginning of the movie, and then certain things begin to happen as the character Andrei moves through this room. He goes into the bathroom, he comes out, lays down on the bed. You can tell he's very tired from traveling. The camera begins to do a slow push in until the scene inevitably goes dark. And at the end of the scene, you see a dog come in, and the dog seems to be only present in the memory section, at least in the beginning of the film. So you get the sense that the dog seems to be connecting the past to the present. And you might have that same feeling too. I don't know if I mentioned it when I was talking about Stalker, but in Stalker there's a dog also. And it's very interesting to watch the dog move through some of these scenes. The dog is present in quite a few scenes as well. As I mentioned, Tarkovsky is great at representing memory, and to me he does that through hallways, doors, windows, compartments, which I feel like are part of memory itself. Again, we see in this movie long tracking shots. There's one tracking shot that happens by a pool also in the beginning when Andrei meets Domenico, the character that seems to be a bit crazy. Not a bit crazy, he's a lot crazy, actually. And but the camera does a slow track across this pool, and it's, again, just very mesmerizing. One of the other parts I love about this film. One of the things I've noticed in Tarkovsky films also is that he will often have the camera looking at the back of a character's head or at their back. And so it's very interesting. It almost puts you in the mind of that character as they're seeing whatever they're seeing or thinking whatever they seem to be thinking. You see this too when Andrei is sitting in the lobby of the hotel waiting for his room, and he's smoking a cigarette, and you're just looking at the back of his head along with the glow of the cigarette. Also in Nostalgia, you see things I've mentioned in previous videos. To me, elements of the earth, air, water, fire, in particular, fire and candles, fire, somebody making a fire at some location. And to me, again, I feel as though this represents that humans can be fairly primitive in some cases, where fire is something that I associate anyway with our early beginnings. We also see in this movie a reappearance of mirrors and reflections, to me also that represents memory. So at one point, Andrei goes to the corner of a room and there's a mirror there, and Tarkovsky leaves the camera there as he's looking at his reflection. And eventually Domenico does the same thing. They're both sort of reflecting and talking with each other, but reflecting on their own character as well. Tarkovsky also likes to have, it seems that he likes to have rain in a lot of his scenes. And, rain is just an amazing thing to see, just in general, but also in a Tarkovsky film. Rain coming through buildings, rain out the window. And to me, it represents in many ways this unpredictability of life itself. These rainstorms come sometimes, and I'm thinking back to Solaris also. You'll see a character in the rain, and sometimes they run from the rain, but other times they'll just stand in the rain and let the rain just pour over them, which is kind of an acceptance of what's happening in life at the time, or just an understanding that there is nature around us, and that nature has some impact that we are not really sure of. At one point in a building where there's rain coming through, I think this is the scene too, Tarkovsky does another slow tracking shot, and on the wall you see 1 + 1 = 1. To me, that means everything is everything. The comedy, the tragedy, the beauty, the ugliness, it's all one thing, and we're just all experiencing it together. That's the meaning that I took from that. Again, I'm not an expert in these films, but that's the impression I got after watching the movie for the first time. Just an amazing sentiment just written on the wall there as a clue for the viewer. The other thing I believe that the 1 + 1 = 1 represents, there's a line in the film, I'm going to get to some of these quotes that I like, that says, "I'm capable of feeling an infinite number of things at the same time," meaning that everything's happening at the same time, the past, the present, the future. And this is an interesting interpretation of the way humans perceive life on this planet. And so I thought that was very interesting also. And as I mentioned earlier in the video, it seems like Tarkovsky is very aware of how memory works and how the past is folded in with the present and anticipates perhaps the future with these images in our brains and the images we see in nature and the interactions that we have with people. Near the end of the film, Domenico, we know he's a crazy man, and he basically goes crazy in a square. You hear some yelling, you're not really sure who it is. You're pretty sure it's Domenico, but you're not really sure until Tarkovsky puts the camera on him. But he's basically yelling in a main public area, and a small crowd has gathered. And he's yelling some things, even as a crazy man, you feel as a viewer like he's saying the perfect thing, that it all makes sense, but yet he's perceived as being crazy. And I'm just going to read a couple of the things that he says. I think they're particularly applicable to what's happening today. One of the things he says is, and I'm quoting here, "If you want the world to go forward, we must hold hands. We must mix the so-called healthy with the so-called sick. Just look at nature and see that life is simple. And as much as life may be simple, it's also very complex. So it's simple and complex at the same time, beautiful and ugly at the same time, those types of things. To me, those are very spiritual ideas, and I feel that Tarkovsky represents those quite well, specifically in this movie, Nostalgia. I don't want to give too much away. I know I said that if you need to turn off the video, that's fine, but I really love the way the film ends. And I'm not going to really talk too much in detail, but let me just say that the main character, Andrei, at the end of the movie is carrying a candle across a pool. And it's one of the most beautiful segments on film that I've ever seen in my life. And it's really, as I was watching this, I was thinking to myself, this is not a quote, but I was thinking to myself that life is an exercise in faith and endurance. And we've seen this endurance theme with Andrei Rublev as an example. But it gives the viewer a sense of hope that as much as things are hard, things may be hard in life, what we bring to it allows us to endure and to have faith and have hope. So I really enjoy that aspect of the film. The other thing too, you may have seen on the internet too, there's a closing shot in Nostalgia that is just so impressive. One of the best closing shots in film I think I've ever seen in my life. Very emotional, very moving. It combines a lot of the elements. It brings together many of the things I've talked about today. But I really, really enjoyed this film. And Nostalgia is going to be high on my list in Tarkovsky favorites. I noticed that as much as the Criterion Collection has editions of movies like Ivan's Childhood and Andrei Rublev and Solaris and Stalker, this movie, Nostalgia, there is a Kino Lorber release of this. And Kino Lorber I've talked about on my channel. Kino Lorber did a release of this movie as well as The Sacrifice, which is next. So as I mentioned, next and finally I'll be watching The Sacrifice, which is Tarkovsky's last film. I've heard in the comments that I'm going to like this film because I'm an Ingmar Bergman fan, so I'm really looking forward to it. I'm really enjoying this journey. Thanks for coming along with me. I really appreciate it. If you have any questions or comments, please leave those comments below. And I'd like to know if you've seen a Tarkovsky film, what your favorite one is. I'll be doing a wrap-up video also once I've finished all the films. If you like this video, click on like and subscribe to my channel if you haven't already. I would really appreciate it. Thanks so much for watching today. I sincerely hope that everyone is safe and well, and I'll see you next time.